365. Okay, order placed to sell short. Let's see.
British government to ride roughshod over public sensibilities over this. Now, if it is a Trump re-election scenario, we are told that he wants to press ahead with this, but we have been told this for a long time. And certainly it was the ambition earlier this year that this deal would be done quite quickly. Well, it hasn't been so far. And as to the Joe Biden situation, well, if he's president, you know, what are his priorities? I suspect he would like to do the deal with us, but we know, and I've been listening to some of your other contributors, domestic issues are going to weigh very, very heavily in the scale.
So, David, we will leave it there.
New short position open for euro at 116.365.
The time has come to elect the next president of the United States, and the stakes could not be higher. Two candidates, two very different paths for the future of the country. I'm David Weston. We will bring you the results as they unfold live on election night. Join us Tuesday, November 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
We are about to close European markets. They are near session highs. They are bouncing back from the big losses that we saw last week. We are still down over the last 5 days by 2 to 3%. We have seen volatility also come a little lower today. Curves are flattening on both sides of the Atlantic, but critically, euro, dollar, and the cable rate are both trading near very pivotal levels, particularly for the single currency around that 116 level. Anyway, today at least, equity markets catching a bit into the critical US election. The details to follow. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Best, your weekly review of the most important business news, analysis, and interviews from Bloomberg Television around the world.
Ken Burns.
Stop on profit for euro at 116.345. Okay. I'm placing a stop on profit 116.345.
What is one word of advice you'll take with you?
Learn how to listen. And that is certainly something that has served me well.
Ankiti, where do you go from here?
It's a huge market, it's a huge opportunity. I want to go 100x from here.
Our philosophy is to partner where we can and stand apart when we should.
What is happening today in India is actually a determination to rebuild our economy.
India has an opportunity not only competing in the space of the factory of the world, but a very big opportunity to compete in being the office of the world.
Stocks wrapping up the day here in Europe. 30 seconds to go until the end of regular trading. Let's take a look at what the session looks like. Stock 600 bouncing back. We're finishing near session highs today. We're up by around 1.5%. But this comes clearly on the back of the significant selling that we saw towards the tail end of last week. In fact, for most of last week. And we are seeing volatility come down as well. So a little bit of a calming of equity markets in advance of the US election. I have to say, though, anecdotally, it seems that many people are not carrying significant positions, risk positions, into that election, and it's maybe some evidence to suggest that that's what last week was really about. As I say, volatility coming down a little bit as well, but we did climb throughout most of October up to recent peaks, which is fading that move a little bit. Be interesting to see whether that carries on over the next 24, 48 hours. That's going to be one of the big trades, certainly to watch out for. In terms of the other trades that we're watching so carefully at the moment, euro dollar front and center. We're trading at critical levels. We're down a little bit again today. We're trading just north of that 116 handle. We were talking to Jordan Rochester a little bit earlier on. If you don't get the blue wave, if you say, for instance, see Joe Biden winning the White House, but the Republicans holding on to the Senate, he was suggesting you could see that number going down to around 114. So keep an eye on this pair to work our way through again the next 24, 48 hours. In terms of the individual markets around Europe, a little bit of dispersion, but not much. The FTSE 100 underperforming a little bit. The CAC 40 outperforming a little bit, with stocks like Lafarge doing very well around Europe. The construction sector's done very well. But actually, in broad terms, what we've seen is the travel sector underperforming today, but there are some notable standouts. So let's talk about some of the single stocks that we're watching. Ryanair is one of them. Seems to be, from a stock point of view, at least today, kind of cruising above the COVID cloud that is really dragging everything else in its wake at the moment. Ryanair trading up by 4.65%. The numbers today were okay. Michael O'Leary, the CEO, delivering a good set of numbers, the boss over there. He is talking about a positive outlook if we are to see a vaccine, but nevertheless, in the near term at least, it's going to be a very tough winter, and even this company can't avoid that. Ocado, the home delivery company, deals with Kroger over in the United States, for instance, trading up very strongly, one of the best performers out of Europe today. Not only in terms of an upgrade for the numbers, it's also buying a robotics company. Remember, that is essentially what this is. It's basically a technology company, so that's a robotics company, augmenting that today with an acquisition. And Lafarge Holcim, I brought that up a little bit earlier, trading up by 4.35%. The outlook looking fairly good. You would have thought actually the construction sector would be on the back foot considering what the narrative we're getting today, but the company posting a positive sort of story going forward. And you've got to think about maybe we are going to see some of the stimulus being turned into capital stock, and you would have thought at some point Lafarge Holcim in the construction sector would be a beneficiary of that. Alex?
Well, all of this set in the backdrop of the resurgence virus and then lockdowns in Europe as well. So that leads us to COVID treatments. Well, biotech company Tiziana Life Sciences will start clinical trials tomorrow. It's developing a treatment that could be nasally administered. Its founder and chairman, Gabriele Tironi, joins us now. Gabriele, what are you offering? What's the treatment? Walk us through the specifics.
So, Alex, today is a big milestone for Tiziana Life Sciences for 3 reasons. One, it's the first time that we are entering a human trial for efficacy and proof of concept of our monoclonal antibody Formalulab in COVID-19 patients in Brazil. The second reason is it is the first time that a monoclonal antibody will be administered nasally, as traditionally all monoclonal antibodies have been given intravenously by injection. So it's the first time that this is ever going to be done, and we think that this can provide a major advantage in treating COVID-19 patients, as you can act locally and attack the cytokine storm, which is present in the respiratory tract and lungs, and which leads to mortality. The third reason we're excited is that we are going to be running an arm of the trial with Formalumab isolated by itself. But in addition to that, we're going to be combining it with dexamethasone, which is a well-known steroid which has been used very commonly in the last 6 months as part of COVID cocktails, including the one that was used to treat President Trump last month. So we're very excited about running that together with dexamethasone and isolated as Formalumab itself.
What type of patients would this be appropriate for, Gabriele?
So we are enrolling 3 arms, 36 patients minimum, 60 maximum. And the idea is to have one set of patients that are controlled without any drug, one with our monoclonal antibody, and then the third with a monoclonal antibody plus dexamethasone. And the idea is to try to prevent patients going onto respirators by the use of our treatment.
If things go okay and efficacy moves forward, when does this treatment sort of hit en masse?
So the idea of the proof of concept trial is to see if we see any positive efficacy in the trial. And once that is achieved, we will enroll a bigger trial where we will be able to measure whether we can get an FDA approval. So the idea of this trial is to get quick results. In fact, it's designed so that we will know by the end of December 2020, so by Christmas time, whether there is a positive result in the administration of Formalumab and with dexamethasone. So the idea is, now that we've seen that it was safe in our previous trial reported last year in healthy volunteers, we now test it to see if it works in improving the status of COVID-19 patients. Once that is achieved, and if that is achieved, we will enroll a much bigger trial.
Gabriele, at what point would a patient receive this single treatment or cocktail treatment with dexamethasone? Would it be as they entered hospital? Would it be before they go on to respiration? I'm curious as to at what point in the process that it would be applied.
So obviously on the first arm, we enroll COVID patients which get no drug treatment. On the second and third arm, the idea would be to, before they go to respirator, to give them, when the symptoms progress in a negative fashion, we would put them on the dexamethasone plus Formalumab trial.
What do you think is the relationship going forward between treatment and a vaccine? There's a lot of questions as to how long a vaccine will be good for, how many shots you have to get, and how then treatments wind up interacting with all of it.
Well, I've been a big believer in that drug therapies are essential in parallel to vaccine treatment, because we believe that drug therapies are necessary for all the population that will not be vaccinated. And for the anti-vaccine believers, there needs to be a drug treatment in parallel. And we're big believers that cocktails where you could attack the viral part of the COVID-19 virus, as well as what transpires when you have the infection, which is the attack on your immune system through an excessive cytokine storm, which attacks your respiratory tract and lungs. So we believe that the best path forward is combining drugs together, which attack separately the virus and the cytokine storm.
What else could this be used for?
Well, with this technology and therapy that we're testing in Brazil could also be used for acute respiratory distress syndrome and MERS as well, Middle East respiratory syndrome. So we believe that if this showed success, it would be a useful therapy beyond COVID-19, because ARDS has been with us way before the COVID pandemic, and it'll be around way after the COVID pandemic. In addition, Guy, we have been developing as our lead indication with Fomalulab a treatment for progressive multiple sclerosis. And we will be initiating a phase 2 trial in the first half of 2021 in progressive multiple sclerosis patients. And so the ability to expand Fomalulab in other autoimmune diseases such as Crohn's disease, type 1 diabetes is massive. And we hope to be able to achieve the success of drugs such as Humira, which are monoclonal antibodies that have achieved $20 billion in revenue per annum. And what we have that is an advantage is we can be delivered orally and nasally. And all monoclonal antibodies up until today have only been delivered by injection. So this trial is going to be a launching pad to test efficacy and also the gateway to expanding into multiple sclerosis, even Alzheimer's and Crohn's disease.
We wish you good luck. Gabriele Cironi of Tiziana, thank you very much indeed. Let's check where European stocks have settled. Positive session for European equities. These are the final numbers. A little bit of a dip down during the auction process and not much to speak about. As you can see, a positive session. We'll carry on the coverage post-game here in Europe at the top of the hour on Bloomberg Radio with the cable show, John Ferro and me. This is Bloomberg.
Just days away from the most critical election in U.S. history and its only democracy at stake. From electronic voting machines to misinformation and fake news and political advertising on social media, is the tech industry ready for its biggest test yet? I'm Emily Chang, and we'll be focusing on these issues all week on Bloomberg Technology in a special electioneering series. Tune in 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, only on Bloomberg Television.
I think what we've seen during this period of time is that communicating via video is not a fad. We are using it in all aspects of our lives, for work, for learning, for communicating, for staying in touch.
Let's check in on the Bloomberg First Word News now. I'm Ritika Gupta. Joe Biden has a 7 percentage point lead in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. That's according to one of the final polls of the campaign. A Monmouth University poll out today has Biden ahead of the President Trump, 51 to 44 in Pennsylvania. Both candidates are campaigning there today. And President Trump is suggesting he may fire infectious diseases chief Anthony Fauci after the election. Over the weekend, Fauci told the Washington Post the U.S. is, quote, in for a whole lot of hurt from the coronavirus this winter. There were chants of fire Fauci at a Trump rally in Florida last night, and the president hinted he may do that once the election is over. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Ritika Gupta. This is Bloomberg. Alex.
All right, thanks so much, Ritika. So let's get to how we're positioned here for the election. Standard Chartered actually wrote a note that said, we continue to believe that sector-specific policies, notwithstanding the U.S. presidential election outcomes, are likely to be positive for risk assets in the medium term. Joining us now, Stuart Kaiser, UBS, head of equity derivatives strategy. Hey, Stuart, help me square all these pegs. What do you do over the next 24 hours? And do you think that no matter who wins, like Standard Chartered does, you're in a bullish mood for stocks?
Look, I mean, the next 24 hours, I think some of us will be hiding under our kitchen tables probably. But otherwise, our view on the election is just, the pullback we've had the last week has probably rebalanced things a little bit. Coming into the election before that, it did feel like the market was probably a little bit too bullish.
Okay, position closed on euro, as you can see, at 116.345. We have 200 pounds in profit.
Our stimulus package would kind of arise there. So I think you will get a generalized risk relief just to have the event behind us. But, to the extent that the outcome, makes it look like we might not get the size of stimulus the market is hoping for, in that case, I don't think it's necessarily bullish from a tactical perspective. So I do think there's still a little bit of two-sided risk here, though the odds are probably skewed to the upside. I do still think you have that outcome that could be negative to markets, and that's why risk is priced the way it is.
Stuart, what happens if the Biden win turns into lots of talk about tax rises? The market is firmly focused on the stimulus side of the equation, but not talking about the revenue-raising side.
Yeah, and I think that is, that's definitely a risk. And I think most equity investors over the summer were much more focused on the downside risk from tax policy as opposed to the upside risk from stimulus. And since then, what we've had is U.S. economic data going a little bit sideways, and then obviously now the potential for